views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals participating in the show. All persons described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions along with adult language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
On the morning hours of June 25th, 1986, in the Somosierra community of Madrid, Spain, a young man was riding with his parents in a tanker truck loaded with 20,000 liters of sulfuric acid. Unfortunately, there was an accident. Both parents died, but the child's remains were never found. It's considered to be by Interpol to be one of the strangest missing persons cases to ever have occurred in Europe. What really happened? You're listening to the Mysterious Brews podcast, and tonight we bring you the case of Juan Pedro Martinez.
Welcome to a deep, dark, dank, moist basement somewhere in the bowels of Georgia.
Everyone loves when you say moist.
They really do.
They love it.
I know that it just warms the coggles of their hearts. Okay, so Miss Winford got a kick out of me calling you Slapnuts at the end of Boys on the Track Part 1.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. She's sent the old rolling on the floor emoji. But we've got some new patrons since we last spoke to you. This is we took the 4th off because Coachum was out of town, and it was the 4th. So there you go.
Don't you dare blame me. Don't blame me. That was you.
I'm not blaming you, brother. Bro. Not blaming you. But we do have some new patrons. We've got the artist known as Carissa at the shout-out tier and Colton Miller 117 at the sticker tier. And I do believe we are all caught up on our mailings. The USPS has finally got their shiitakes together. So, not a whole lot of... I'm sorry. I apologize. You have a 5-star.
I do. This comes from Red 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. He has updated his 5-star reviews many times. So if you want to get rid on the air, just update your review. You know?
That's right.
He says, love you guys. I've been obsessed with the Zodiac case for years. Listening to these episodes on the subject has got me so happy you have no idea. It's solved now as far as I'm concerned. I can't thank you enough. You guys are killing it.
Duh.
I mean, we've been killing it.
That's right. And we're coming up on year 6, starting year 6. By the time this drops, it will be...
Really?
Yeah. It will be officially year 6.
It's been that long?
Yeah, it has.
Oh, my God, dude.
I know. Almost 250 episodes, not counting the micro brews and the Patreons. So, yeah.
Well, I certainly appreciate you because without you, this could not happen. You are the glue, my friend.
I do appreciate it, brother. And I couldn't do it without you, bro. All right.
My contributions are small, but vital.
That is correct. All right, so we are talking about this evening, we're taking a break between the multi-part episodes that we had planned for the summer. We are going to hit you with another big one after this case that is multi-part, but we're going to break up the old multi-parts and give you a lesser-known disappearance in the great country of Spain. This is the disappearance of one Juan Pedro Martinez. He was an energetic 10-year-old boy who loved adventure. His jet black hair, dark brown eyes, and infectious smile made him adorable to everyone that met him. He was the son of Andres Martinez and Carmen Gomez, and he was an only child. In 1986, Juan's father, Andres, promised to take him with him on one of his trips for work. Now, Andres was a truck driver and routinely made long overnight trips. The trip that he was going to take Juan on would be across the country of Spain to the Basque region. There was a huge catch, though. Juan had to achieve good grades in school. So Juan took the bet, studied his tail off, and his hard work paid off. So on June 25th, 1986, Juan, Andres, and Carmen all set off for the Basque region. Now, on this trip, Andres was tasked with delivering 20,000 liters or 5,284 gallons of sulfuric acid from their home city of Cartagena to Bilbao. Now, the Martinez family lived in Cartagena on the Mediterranean Sea, which is approximately 4.5 hours southeast of Madrid. Bilbao is approximately the same distance northeast of Madrid on the Bay of Biscay in the northern Atlantic. Now, it has been theorized by some investigators that Andres asked Carmen to come so that she could keep Juan occupied for the 8-hour trip. Now, the trip would take the family through the mountainous regions of northern Spain and more specifically the infamous Somo Sierra Mountain Pass. Now, witnesses would tell authorities that they witnessed a truck speeding through a narrow pass, driving erratically, and allegedly forcing other cars off the road. It has been estimated that Andres' truck reached a speed of 90 miles per hour at one brief moment. It is alleged that when the truck reached this high speed, Andres could no longer control the truck through the dangerous curves, causing the truck to hit an oncoming vehicle. I think it was another semi that he hit. Now, the cab of Andres' truck was crushed, killing him and Carmen instantly. The crash caused a breach in the tanker that Andres was hauling, and the sulfuric acid began to leak from it. It has been reported that the spill caused several tires to explode. The more alarming problem was the risk to the surrounding area that the sulfuric acid posed. Now, emergency responders arrived on scene fairly quickly due to the number of drivers that had stopped to report this wild driving truck. They were able to contain the acid and prevent it from contaminating any of the nearby rivers and waterways. During the chaos of trying to corral the acid, investigators combed through the wreckage to retrieve the bodies of Andres and Carmen. They were unaware that Juan had been in the cab with his parents since there were only 2 bodies found. It wasn't until investigators contacted Carmen's mother later in that day to inform her of her daughter's death that they learned that Juan had been traveling with his parents. Investigators were flabbergasted. How could they have missed a 10-year-old boy? A desperate search for Juan kicked off, and investigators returned to the scene to look for signs of Juan. They located children's clothes, cassette tapes for kids in the back of the truck, confirming Juan had been traveling with his parents that fateful day. Now, his body was not found, and authorities have the truck wreckage lifted off the ground to see if he was thrown from the cab and somehow pinned underneath. But again, Juan's body was not found. Upon realizing he was not within the wreckage, the search for Juan commenced. Now, from the beginning, there were many unanswered questions and little to no evidence to point investigators in a direction to locate Juan. Andres and Carmen's families were devastated by the news of their untimely deaths, but the agonizing uncertainty of where Juan was added an extra layer of sorrow. Now, desperate, the Martinez family pleaded for any information that could shed light on Juan's whereabouts. Witnesses began to come forward, filling in some of the gaps in the investigation. So after the crash, several witnesses reported that a white Nissan van pulled up to Andres' truck after the crash. In the van was a tall man with a mustache and a woman described as Nordic-looking. Eyewitnesses claimed that they saw these 2 people remove a small package from the truck's cab before quickly leaving the scene. Another account of the white van came from 2 herders out in the countryside that saw the crash that day. They were also questioned by authorities. They said very shortly after the truck turned on its side, a white van pulled up and two blonde-haired people got out, a guy and a girl. They had white lab coats on. The fact that they were blonde stood out to them, and they knew the two people were foreigners, likely more from a Nordic type of country. It appeared to them that they took something from the truck before taking off. Now, these herders were far away, so it was hard for them to say for sure, but it could be that they were retrieving some drugs because traces of heroin was found in the cab of the truck.
Oh.
Yeah. Little interesting. So we got two accounts here of some white van pulling up and getting something out of the cab of Andreas's truck. Now,
yeah, but I mean, a white van, people pulling in to kidnap a kid.
Your guess is as good as everybody else's there, bro.
That's insane.
Oh, I agree.
That's insane to think about.
Now, let's look at Andreas's truck and see if we can figure out why he was speeding down that mountain road in the first place. Now, authorities needed a better understanding of what went wrong that day. So it was assumed that Andreas lost control over the truck or his brakes failed. However, that concept fell apart when authorities examined the brakes. They were in perfect working condition. Several experts and mechanics looked them over to double and triple check if there was a failure, and no one found any issues with the brakes at all. On top of that, the tachometer of the truck, which if you have a newer vehicle, you don't have one of those. You just have that digital display. But anyway, a tachometer is the gauge that measures the working speed of the engine. And in Andreas's truck, it was still intact, and it showed that on that 8-mile stretch of road between when the family left their breakfast stop to the time of the crash, Andreas had completely stopped his car more than 12 times. This would make sense if there was some sort of traffic jam, but this was at 6 in the morning, and all the other travelers on the road that day who had seen the crash and were interviewed said there was absolutely zero traffic. This became another big question mark. Not only is he just stopping on a main road for no reason, but it's not as an easy task to bring that big-ass tanker truck full of liquid to a complete stop. So what was the motivation behind the stops? Some of these stops were only seconds in length, which titillated investigators and fueled speculation that Andreas may have been attempting to communicate with or avoid another vehicle on the road. Some theories suggest a possible connection between these stops and the mysterious white Nissan van that was seen near the crash. Now, investigators thoroughly followed up on every lead, conducted extensive searches in the surrounding areas, and placed missing posters featuring Juan's face all over the region, hoping to bring forth any leads as to where he could be. Did I say Andreas or Juan's?
You said Andreas.
Well, it was Juan's face. So there you go. So as time passed, the search yielded no significant evidence. In the aftermath of Juan's disappearance, reports started trickling in. While most of these sightings lacked concrete details linking them directly to Juan, one particular account stands out, and that was in May of 1987. A blind woman of Iranian descent entered a driving school in Madrid accompanied by a young boy resembling Juan. The boy's accent and behavior caught the owner's attention. When the owner asked the woman about the boy, she abruptly changes the subject. Her attitude toward the boy left the owner convinced that he had come face to face with Juan Pedro Martinez. Now, another version of this same story goes like this. In May of 1987, a man ran into a blind old lady from Iran asking where the U.S. Embassy was. They were in Madrid, and she was accompanied by a young man, or a young boy. The man assumed he was her grandson. She explained they had been in the country for only 6 months. When the boy spoke as a sort of translator, his Spanish was not only perfect, but he also had an Andalusian accent, which is where Juan Pedro was from. Now, this stuck out to him because he remembered finding it very odd and complimented the boy on speaking so well. It was at this point the woman seemed to get nervous and withdraw from the conversation while holding the boy's hand. It wouldn't be until later that this man saw a missing poster for Juan Pedro and swore that he's the one he talked to that day, but by then, who knows where they had gone. Now, this aligns with the idea that Juan Pedro may have wandered off after suffering a head injury in the crash and not knowing who he was, and this is why he was unable to tell anyone his true identity. Now, as the case gained notoriety, various theories emerged. One theory suggests that Juan perished in the crash with his body dissolved by the sulfuric acid that was spilled from the truck. This theory was swiftly debunked. One, due to how quickly the scene was contained by authorities, and two, by how long it takes sulfuric acid to dissolve a body completely. Now, authorities have said even if he was immersed in sulfuric acid, it would take at least 24 hours for that acid to eat all of the soft tissue and at least 5 days to break down the bones. Furthermore, the nails, hair, and teeth would not have been dissolved in the acid, so there would have been at least some remains of Juan amongst the wreckage. Another theory is that maybe a, quote, good Samaritan who was on the road that day and witnessed the crash stopped and found a severely injured boy. They picked him up in order to try and save him. Rushing him to a nearby hospital, Juan passes away while on the drive. The person or persons begin to panic. While having the best intention, the adrenaline of what they witness passes, and as they come back to their senses, they realize they didn't know how to save Juan and that they should have stayed at the scene awaiting the authorities. Now they're thinking that maybe they will be blamed for Juan's death. They could have had a checkered past, and instead of dealing with the authorities and telling them what they had done, they just dumped Juan's body somewhere.
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense to me.
No, I don't. So far, those two theories are kind of not even really plausible. I mean, I guess the second one could be, but I just don't see it.
I mean, if you're a good Samaritan, you pick up a small child and you're trying to take him to the hospital and he dies, you're just going to dump him on the side of the road? That does not make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, me either. So another theory questions if Juan was indeed in the cab at the time of the crash. This theory suggests that Juan may have been kidnapped by drug traffickers. This does have some factual basis and not just a fanciful theory. During the investigation, like we said, the truck's cab was went over and they found trace amounts of heroin and cocaine. With the sighting of this unidentified couple in the white Nissan van removing a package from the truck, it is speculated that Andreas could have been transporting drugs as well as a tanker full of sulfuric acid. Now, a lot of shade has been thrown at Andreas for this, but keep in mind, we are in the birthplace of La Cosa Nostra, or as we like to refer to them in the States, the Mafia. It is well known that the Mafia will force some of the delivery drivers to transport things against their will. Some proponents of this theory state that Juan may have seen something he wasn't meant to, which led to his abduction and subsequent demise. Now, a similar theory to the Mafia angle is that Juan was taken hostage. Several truck drivers claim that trucks in the area are often hijacked by cartel operatives who threaten truckers to carry drugs over the border for them. This leads some to believe that Andreas was forced to carry the drugs and that Juan was taken hostage to ensure that he would comply. This theory, while plausible, just lacks some concrete evidence. But it is a good theory. I do like that one so far. Now, another theory suggests that Juan may have suffered some sort of head trauma during the accident, causing disorientation and memory loss. Supporters of this theory point to the sighting of him by the old man with the old woman and suggest that he may have wandered from the scene in a state of confusion, despite the absence of witnesses seeing him leave the scene. While no one saw him leave, this theory could be plausible because you have two possible scenarios. One, Juan is disoriented and injured and wanders into the nearby wilderness and succumbs to his wounds. The second one is a perfect storm. You have the unforgiving elements, the rugged terrain, coupled with the possibility of Juan having burns from the sulfuric acid. This would compel him to seek relief for his sulfuric acid burns, searching for water. Now, there is a creek/stream near the accident site, and it is theorized he could have succumbed to his injuries as he makes it to the stream and falls in, thus being carried away by the current. Now, a theory similar to that is that Juan managed to survive the crash and was burned to some degree by the acid. The pain would have been tremendous and unbearable. In a panic to save himself, he runs downhill towards the stream, hoping to wash off the acid. At that point, maybe he fell in and was just taken away. Even if he didn't get burnt by the acid, he most certainly could have sustained a very serious head injury or was even just in shock at what had just happened. Feeling as if he needed to get as far from the crash site as possible, Juan Pedro makes his way to the woods. Upon walking in the woods for several minutes, he succumbs to the elements or his head injury. So you could have a case where Juan Pedro suffered a brain injury, forgot his entire life, and there are stories of people who do this from time to time. They just wander off only to be found years later living under different names with no recollection of how or why they got to where they were. We are still left with no explanation as to why Andreas sped his truck to the point of flipping it. Was it some sort of medical emergency he was stopping for? Was he not feeling well and unsure if he should get help or not? It could have been a situation where he got sick at breakfast, pulled over, got sick, starts feeling better, continued on for the wave to hit again. Now, some people have theorized that he could have had something like the beginning indications of a heart attack and could have felt lightheaded and wasn't sure what to do. And then the heart attack hits. He would have then lost consciousness behind the wheel, which would send the truck speeding down the hill and headed right for the curb. Now, the erratic driving could have been equated to Carmen seeing what's going on and trying to steer the truck away from danger, but not being able to slide over and get to the brakes. In the end, all of this is pure speculation. There are still no real answers in this mystery. We only have bits of eyewitness accounts and rumors about the mafia that you can draw conclusions from, but without any evidence, it doesn't mean much. Outside of Spain and the surrounding area, there really isn't a lot of concrete evidence about the case that you can find. You really have to dig, which may lead some credence to the involvement of organized crime and the idea that maybe they paid off some people in charge to look the other way. However, it's been 40 years since Juan Pedro's disappearance, and there's still no answers as to what has happened to him. So the chances of finding any answers are slim to none. All we can really hope for is a deathbed confession or some scattered remains. The hardest thing in this case was finding anything in English that you could read because everything I found was in Spanish. Thank God for some YouTube videos and some people that have, like on Reddit, that have talked about this case. But we know this is a short little case because we are in between big old cases and we wanted to give you a break from the multi-part things.
Yeah, I thought we were doing the multi-part case.
Yes, he did. And to his surprise, we were not. So, recommendations?
I'm going to recommend nothing.
Oh.
I have nothing.
You have nothing. Nothing to recommend. Not a beer, nothing. You didn't eat anywhere nice.
No, I have nothing.
Well, if you want to follow up on the boys on the track, I recommend, again, going to idfiles.com and looking at all of the different angles. And we could have made that into a 10-part series, but there are angles out there that we, A, are not willing to put our name on, and B, are pretty far out there. Well. If things do not change, young Coachum, in about 4 days, the air temperature is supposed to be 101.
Oh, my God. It's so fucking hot.
It's awful, man. We've had
The
2
South
good
is-
days.
The South is terrible. It's terrible.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
It's terrible.
Well, I know, again, I said this before, but I'll say it again. I know that this is a little bit of a shorter episode, but, Coach, you got anything else?
You know I don't.
Deuces.